Life is full of twists and turns, some of which are so unexpected they leave an indelible mark, erasing everything that came before. That's exactly what happened the day Steve, my husband Eddie's son from his first marriage, walked into my room unannounced. Up until that moment, life had been comfortably predictable, with every day following a familiar rhythm. Eddie was at work as usual, while I was getting ready for an evening fundraiser. Steve, who had recently come back to live with us after enduring a challenging phase, was quietly staying at home. Our interactions were minimal, almost non-existent. His reserved demeanor and quiet presence in the house seemed to create an unspoken agreement. There was no need to build a connection, but that evening changed everything. I was in my room, standing in front of the mirror, trying on a tight red dress. It hugged my figure in a way that felt almost too bold, so I decided to switch to something more understated. Tossing the dress aside, I remained in my underwear, scanning my wardrobe for a more appropriate option. My eyes landed on a classic black dress, simple yet elegant, hanging neatly in the corner of the closet. As I bent down to remove my stockings, the fabric glided smoothly down my legs, exposing my bare skin. Suddenly, the door swung open with a creak. "Ellen, are you here?" Steve's voice broke the silence but faltered when he saw me. I froze, the room suddenly feeling too small and suffocating. His eyes swept upwards, starting at the floor and stopping at my shoulders. His cheeks turned crimson as he quickly averted his gaze, stumbling awkwardly. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, nearly knocking over the lamp in his haste to leave. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone with a whirlwind of emotions: embarrassment, shock, and something else I couldn't quite name. My heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo in the room. The encounter, fleeting as it was, had imprinted itself on me in a way I couldn't shake. It felt like a line had been crossed, though I wasn't sure by whom. A shift in dynamics. That incident with Steve lingered in my thoughts far longer than I would have liked. At dinner that night, Eddie chatted casually about his plans for the upcoming week, but I barely registered his words. I nodded automatically, my focus entirely on Steve, who sat across the table, unusually silent. His behavior had shifted subtly since that evening. Instead of avoiding me as he used to, he now seemed to be everywhere I turned. He lingered in the kitchen while I cooked, his presence palpable even when he said nothing. In the living room, he would sit quietly, watching me, his gaze filled with something I couldn't quite decipher, something both unsettling and intriguing. One evening, while Eddie was working late, Steve entered the living room where I was curled up with a book. His voice was hesitant, almost nervous. "Ellen, can I ask you something?" I looked up, startled by the serious tone in his voice. He stood in the doorway, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting shadows on his face. His dark eyes met mine, and I saw an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Of course," I replied, trying to sound composed. He stepped closer, his tall frame dominating the space between us. For a moment, he hesitated, as if grappling with the weight of his thoughts. Then he spoke. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Like everything you're doing is not what you were meant to do?" His words were raw, honest, and they caught me off guard. I searched his face for clues, but his expression revealed little. "Sometimes," I admitted softly. His gaze held mine, unyielding. "Ever since I came back here, I've felt disconnected, except when I'm around you," he confessed. "You're the only person who makes me feel alive." The words hit me like a thunderbolt, leaving me rooted to the spot. I stood up, trying to put some distance between us, but he reached out, his fingers grazing my arm. His touch was warm, almost electric. "Steve, this isn't right," I said, my voice trembling with uncertainty. But he didn't let go. The air between us grew heavy with unspoken emotions. When his lips brushed mine, the kiss was tentative but charged with a depth of feeling I hadn't anticipated. For a fleeting moment, the world around us seemed to dissolve, leaving only the two of us suspended in time. Crossing boundaries. From that moment on, an invisible thread seemed to connect us, drawing us together even as we tried to resist. In the days that followed, every glance, every accidental touch carried an unbearable tension. One evening, as I tried to lose myself in a movie, Steve sat on the couch beside me, his presence impossible to ignore. His hand rested on the armrest, just inches from mine. The silence stretched between us, thick and oppressive, until I couldn't bear it any longer. I stood abruptly, intending to leave, but Steve mirrored my movement, blocking my path. "Wait," he said. Softly, his voice barely above a whisper. His plea stopped me in my tracks. I turned to face him, and our eyes locked. The intensity of his gaze was disarming, and I felt myself being pulled toward him despite every rational thought screaming at me to walk away. "I've been trying to find the right words," he said, his voice low and strained. "But I think we both know what this is." I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stood frozen as he stepped closer. His hand brushed against mine, sending a shiver down my spine. When he leaned in, his lips barely grazed mine. The kiss was both hesitant and desperate, a release of emotions we had both been holding back for far too long. A turning point. The days that followed were a blur of stolen glances and unspoken words. The boundaries that once existed between us had been irrevocably blurred. One morning I found Steve in the kitchen, his face pale and drawn. He clutched his phone tightly, his knuckles white. "I have to leave soon," he said, his voice hollow. "Why?" I asked, my heart sinking. He hesitated, turning away to grip the counter for support. "It's complicated," he said. "I just think it's for the best." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, leaving me reeling. That night, as the house lay cloaked in darkness, I found him in the living room, staring out the window. The sight of him, so lost and vulnerable, broke something inside me. "I can't leave you," he whispered, turning to face me. The confession was both a relief and a torment. We stood there, caught in the gravity of our emotions, knowing that we were teetering on the edge of something that could never be undone. The aftermath. The next morning, the sunlight streaming through the curtains seemed to wash away the shadows of the night before. But the reality of our situation remained. Steve was still planning to leave, and I knew it was the only way to preserve what little stability we had left. As he prepared to go, we exchanged a final look, a silent promise that this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a story that had yet to be written.